the brand doctor, will see you now. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the 205th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. If you missed our previous episode, go back. Listen to Louis Bruno. He got into the HVAC business at the age of 17. That was 10 years ago. He now has an $18 million business and growing. And you want to hear how he did it because you can do it too. He really mastered the fundamentals of sales, of marketing, and getting referrals, and it shows. Next week, we've got Dennis Yu. Dennis, I've met a couple of times now and worked with him on a couple of projects over the last couple of years. How many times can I say a couple? And I saw him most recently at the Social Media Marketing World event in San Diego. I introduced him when he spoke. And the guy runs the social media for the Golden State Warriors, among other things. Super smart guy. He's got a big, hungry team. And these guys understand online marketing, SEO, conversions. But he shares a tip on how to get started advertising on Facebook at $1 a day and then ramping that up once you produce results. So that is coming up next week. You want to make sure and tune into that because advertising and marketing is so important nowadays. And I got into that with Sean Williams back just a few episodes ago, number 202. Sean is the VP of VaynerMedia, which is owned by Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a big name in online marketing, grew his family's wine business to, $40, $50 million. Now VaynerMedia is $100 million plus company, maybe $300 million. I don't know. It's huge. And he really dove in that episode, session 202, about how social media marketing is really a pay-per-click and advertising platform. No longer can you just share things online and get adequate traffic. You've got to be driving ads. So Dennis gets into a lot more specifics on how to do what Sean said, just by default, that's what they do. That's how they use social media. So you've got to be ready to advertise on that. Today's guest, Laura Busche, she is bilingual. We get into what she's doing in New York, North America, and what she's doing in South America. She is wrapping up her PhD in consumer psychology. So this is a great time to dive into that subject as well, seeing how we are knee deep, head deep, neck deep. Maybe we're in over our heads with this 2016 election. So if you're not studying that, you're a fool. If you think anything in these elections is not planned, you might want to buy a bridge that I have for sale in Arizona. Everything is planned. Everything is scripted. And even when the occasional mistake does happen, pay attention to how they respond. Both sides, all three sides. I've been taking a look at Gary Johnson. That dude has an interesting platform. But I won't get into too much politics here. But understanding psychology is critical in everything that you do. Looking at how ads are run, how speeches are given, how they are promoted, how each side responds to one another, can teach you things on how to grow your own business, how to share content, how to respond to your competition if you do it all. So all of that comes into play. Anytime you are engaging with another human being, a sale is being made. And at its root is psychology, understanding how to connect with the other person to create the feeling and the response and the action that you want them to take. So this is an important interview. Pay attention to what we cover. Check out Laura's information. And if you need additional support moving forward to grow your business, please check out the resources I have. I have a daily email you can find if you go to this episode, thesaleswhisperer.com/session 205. You can get all the notes, but on the right-hand side is an opt-in box for you to receive the daily emails. And that's where I talk more about inbound selling, creating inbound sales, because you must negotiate from a position of strength. And if the prospects are coming to you, you can begin the dialogue from a position of strength. And that brings down barriers. It helps you do what I say, sell more, faster, at higher margin with less stress and more fun. So get them coming to you, and we'll make things so much easier. Now let's help you make even more sales easier with Laura. Laura Busche, all the way from Colombia. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
I'm doing great, Wes. How about you?
I'm good. But hey, I'm asking the questions, okay? This is my show. Don't be turning around already. I see what you're doing there. You're using this psychology, right? I've been reading up on you. You're getting your PhD in consumer psychology. But
That's
look,
right.
that has nothing to do with podcast interview psychology, okay? So those tricks don't work on me.
Got it. Not asking questions.
All right. You've been warned. All right. Hey, I ran across you online. I think what I saw was your Trump and Hillary's brands analyzed, design, psychology, and politics. And I was like, hey, this is really good. I need to talk to her. But for our listeners that may not know much about you, would you mind taking a minute or two, give us a little thumbnail sketch, and like to say we'll dive down the rabbit hole?
Sure thing. So first of all, thanks for having me. That one article is something that I'm particularly fascinated by because it kind of combines three disciplines that I'm very fond of. It combines branding, psychology, and business. So that's kind of what I've decided to pursue as far as my professional background. I'm originally a business major. Then I did a master's in design management, and I'm now finishing, as you rightly said, a PhD in consumer behavior, essentially. There's a lot of psychology there. So I've kind of explored all these avenues because my main interest is marketing, and to be able to truly understand how consumer attitudes and behaviors are shaped, you do need a more holistic view of it. You can't just look at it from a business standpoint. You can't just look at design, as a form of art or as a form of visual expression. You have to understand what are the psychological triggers behind every action we engage in as consumers and as human beings. So, over the years, I've built a mentoring, a consulting, and a writing practice around combining those three areas. And that has meant a lot of different things. I've had the chance to participate in entrepreneurship programs in Latin America, where, we've taught now, I think it's a little over 400 tech entrepreneurs how to build their brands from scratch. I've also been in charge of shaping brand content strategies for various companies in the U.S. and here. And it's just been a really exciting road because there are no instructions. There haven't really been any rules. I've kind of made my path along the way, and it's incredibly exciting and rewarding.
So, yeah, I did some the psychology of consumers last night, just hanging out at Walmart. It was really interesting. So is that what you do? You just get like some ice cream, iced tea, and just kind of watch people at Walmart? Is that what you do?
That's exactly what I do.
Whew, I don't know. That was kind of scary.
Like the job.
I go at once every 6 months when my wife drags me, and that's about all I can handle. So I'm glad you can stomach that. There are some interesting types there.
For sure. You also brought up Walmart, not any other store.
So I love what you're talking about, branding, psychology, and business. Because, those, when you really sit back and look at it, those all have to go together, right? Because what's the purpose of branding if you're not running a business? And if you don't understand what makes people tick, if you don't understand what gets their attention, if you don't understand what will get them to open, to read, to click, to buy, then, you're just spinning your wheels, right? So did you always understand that symbiotic relationship, or like were you getting your business degree and you were like, oh my gosh, this is all much deeper than I thought?
Oh, you got that right. I was in the middle of my business degree when I started talking to all kinds of professors. I was like, you do understand that I can't just look at marketing and not feel the need to know about design. That was my first kind of wake up call. I was going to all these advertising courses, and I couldn't design an advertising piece for the life of me. And I felt that something was missing. So I kind of started doing some independent research and shaped my internships and all that, like in that direction. But yeah, I definitely felt like I was lacking a few other skill sets to really be able to, create, develop brands that are meaningful, that are robust, that really engage their audiences. So, and then, after I was in design, which was my master's degree, then like the little psychology bug started biting. Like, are you really aware that the colors you're using are not arbitrary? Are you really aware that the type that you're selecting, the fonts that you're using here, have a deep impact in the way the message is being read? So all these things are going through my head, and I've always been a huge believer in education, but more so in independent education, like the kind of education that you carve out for yourself. So yeah, there was no undergrad or grad degree that matched what I needed, so I kind of combined all the things.
So welcome to my school of hard knocks. There's plenty of room at the table.
Happy to be here.
All right. So I'm reading through some of your articles. I see some of the things you're talking about. And, the questions I have, because I've always steered my small business clients away from branding. I've told them, because a lot of them are struggling to grow, right? And I'm like, focus on selling. Sell consistently, deliver a wow experience, over-deliver, right? Under-promise, over-deliver, and over time and consistency, you'll build a brand by doing good business. So am I giving them the wrong advice? Can a person of one or a small business actually build a brand while actually making money?
Absolutely. The answer is absolutely. And the answer is, I totally understand where you're coming from. And that is indeed good advice. It's just that we've kind of grown thinking that branding and product are two different things, or they're mutually exclusive. Like, I cannot develop my brand because I'd be taking away resources from building out this product, or coming out with a new feature, or even hiring a salesperson and actually, bringing in the customers and moving the needle that way. Because in the end, no business is sustainable unless you can secure a certain amount of sales, a certain amount of revenue. The thing is, when you start seeing branding as this like all-encompassing activity that affects how you engage in business throughout all of your channels, then you start to understand that you cannot just ignore branding. Like, you're either engaging in branding without knowing it, or you're consciously making these decisions, bearing in mind that you are developing a brand for the long term. So either way, you are building a brand. If you were to ask around, if you were to call your customers and ask what they think about your brand, trust me, they have a message in their minds. So it's up to you to decide if you want to be active in shaping that message, if you want to get more involved in it, and definitely if you want to have sort of a higher vision for your business that doesn't prevent any of the other things from happening, like the daily tasks, the hustle, the sales, the product improvements. They're all happening. They're kind of coordinated with this major vision that you have, which, to me is the brand story.
So what is that? I mean, what should somebody consciously and selectively, intentionally do to build a brand? Let's say you're the local chiropractor, right? Or you're the local, local dentist. You're the local IT or marketing consultant, right? Working from home, maybe one full-time employee, maybe some subcontractors you throw some business out to when you get a big deal. But otherwise, it's you working from home. I mean, how do these people intentionally build a brand while keeping the lights on?
They are currently doing it. Like all these small entrepreneurs you've mentioned, all these solopreneurs even, because this is very popular these days, just a single person hustling day and night. All these people are already doing it somehow. And I guess the way I can make this even clearer is if I shared what is my definition of branding, and it's the one that I've used in the book and repeatedly throughout my practice, is a brand is the story that consumers recall when they think of you. So, if you are a small lawn mowing business, there's got to be some kind of impression that over time you have built in those consumers' minds. In your most loyal customers certainly have something to say about the quality of your service, about the products that you use, the quality, the experience of working with you. So that's when we start narrowing down branding to three major components. There's your story, which is at the end of the day, like all that message that you convey in your exercise of selling products and services. There are your symbols, which is what most people think of branding. Like if you were to ask someone, someone on the street, what is branding? They'd usually just say it's a logo or some kind of visual symbol. So in doing that, they're kind of reducing the whole concept of brand to what you see, to the logo, to the symbol, to the graphics. But that's only a component. So yes, if you're a small business, you don't have a fortune to invest in your symbols, but you do have many resources to build out that story. So it doesn't mean that you're not actively pursuing brand development. It just means that the symbols component, is something that you need to work on, perhaps, a little more. And then the third and last component is the strategy, which is, yes, you have a great message. Yes, consumers are reminded of this great story when they think about you. Yes, you do have a strong set of visual symbols to represent you, but how are you spreading the word? Like, how are you actively sharing that, making sure that more customers know about you? And this is where lean branding and branding connects with sales, because, no brand can exist in isolation. A brand is not an island. Like, you cannot build a business and just close yourself to the idea of selling, to the idea of reaching out to customers, to partners, whether that's B2B or B2C. So most people just detach all of these other components of branding and think of just the logo. And I think that's the greatest misconception.
So, what you're talking about, it sounds like marketing. Is marketing different than branding, or are they the same?
Well, that's where I wouldn't want the subtle terminology to kind of get in the way of what entrepreneurs can do with branding. So what I usually try to say is, forget everything you've heard in the past, forget everything you know about marketing, and try to open your mind to the idea that you're here for the legacy. Like, you are building a business that's here for the long run. So, rather than focusing on the conversation of, whether branding and sales and marketing are different things, or they don't overlap, or how they overlap, I think the idea that you are not just here to close a transaction, but to create meaningful impact and change the way your customers perceive you, I think that's the main takeaway. Now that you ask, though, I do see marketing as a more general discipline that's more focused more focused on how you enter the marketplace with the right pricing strategy, with the right product strategy. Think about the 4 Ps. So how you engage in promotion, how you play with distribution, how you secure the right place for your product. Whereas branding is more of a combination of various disciplines, including the ones that I've mentioned before. So psychology, design, business. It's a little more holistic in its approach,
Gotcha. Now, on your website, one of your blog posts talks about 10 branding tips to rock trade shows. And I know being a little greedy here, I would love some advice on trade shows. I haven't done very many. And the few that I have, I've probably broken even. Some have lost money. Overall, maybe I've made a little money, but they haven't been raging successes for me. And from my experience as an employee, for a decade in high tech, and then seeing it as a consultant as well, I see very few people following up from trade shows. I see most trade shows, their booths are too cluttered. Their messaging is obscured. There's no real obvious call to action in the majority of them. So what are some of your top tips on how people can leverage branding, like you say in this post, to rock a trade show?
Sure. So I think the first step in any kind of marketing effort that you're engaging in, where you're going to invest resources, is to get the ego out of the way. And when I say that, I mean, forget about all those vanity metrics. Like, I have 100 people getting close to my booth, and here are all these people eating my candy, my free candy also. So it's not like very hard to get all these people to hear what you have to say when they're getting something in exchange. But those are all more on the side of vanity than they are on the side of ROI. And I think if entrepreneurs were more focused on results and more focused on what they want to get out of this experience, what they want to get out of this investment, then a lot of the other decisions would become much clearer to them. So, a basic principle whenever you're trying to design your booth for a trade show or your strategy for a trade show is to make sure that you're actually handing out something that's memorable. You're leaving whoever got close to you, whoever heard your story, you're leaving them with something that they can use later to reach out to you in case they are in need of your services or products. And that has to do a lot with just having the right call to action, making sure you really nail down that action that you want this person to pursue after they've left. Sometimes it's not clear. How many times have you been in a trade show where you go to someone's booth and you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do now again? So I heard you and I have your catalog, but what's the next step here? Like, what's the next step in our relationship? And the more successful brands, the ones that, really capitalize on their trade show experiences, are those who can provide a clear pathway for customers long after the trade show is over. Should they be focusing on trying to close deals or at least get all the opt-in info right there versus giving them something memorable and hoping that, there's some type of time-sensitive offer that gets them to remember you and take action once they get home? Yeah, I think that's more of it depends kind of question, because that some products have sales funnels that are much shorter. Others take a little bit more time. It's going to take a little bit more time for you to close. But I think the common piece of advice that would serve any company here is you need to know what your funnel is and how this investment fits in that funnel. Like, is this an activity that should get your customer interested in signing up for your updates? Is this an activity aimed at, closing the deal? Maybe you sell something that has a very short sales funnel and, it's just a matter of securing minimum order quantities and signing here and there and figuring out the logistics. If that's your case, then obviously, trade shows are going to be huge closers for you, huge sales closers. But in other cases, a single sale could take months. So your goal with the booth and everything else you're doing is actually to get that customer into your funnel. So it's like a top of funnel kind of activation activity versus I'm trying to get money from you right away. Right. But you need to know what that funnel is. It doesn't matter that your customer is not immediately paying for something. You need to know when in time you're standing.
Well, where should, again, going back to these smaller businesses with limited time, maybe limited expertise, limited budget, do you have a general recommendation on where they should start or focus in the beginning? I mean, are people getting social media wrong? Can any business benefit from social media? Or should some be focusing on maybe more traditional print or direct mail? Or do they need to try to do it all if they're really going to grow?
Well, doing it all is the one thing I highly advise against, because it's the most unfocused, unproductive way you can face branding efforts and all kinds of efforts actually in business. The more laser focused you can get, the better. So being everywhere, being all to everyone is not something that I recommend. Actually, as I said, I advised against the opposite. I advised the opposite. But now that you mentioned social media and like how useful it can be for small businesses, especially those working on a trade show experience, like building up that momentum to the event, it is a cost-effective way to reach audiences if your audiences can be found in the channels that you're using. And I'll repeat that. Social media is a worthwhile investment for small businesses as long as your customer is present in the channels where you're investing. You can't just pursue social media or start tweeting like crazy or posting like crazy if your target customer is nowhere to be found in these networks. And this is true for all kinds of companies. You see B2B companies that are using social platforms that are not adequate for the client they're trying to reach. Sometimes your client is just not a digital native. Sometimes your client is more of an offline individual that needs to be found via print or via direct calls or via some kind of physical material that you send them. There's no one size fits all approach here. The only, and I can imagine you have had a lot of experience with this, like the only appropriate strategy for all businesses is to seek your customers wherever they are and reach them however they want to be reached, however, they can be reached.
Right. So do you have a process or a methodology for companies to follow to find out where those prospective customers are?
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't say there's a magic technique to find.
Oh, no. I want magic. I want silver bullet. I want an easy button. I want something I can do in the next 10 minutes. While we're on this interview, I'll need you to help me make $1 million. So go ahead. No pressure.
Abracadabra. It's not going to happen. Let's see. So one of the most basic strategies that I've seen work a lot of times when people are trying to figure out where their target customers are is looking at your early adopter base. So looking at the first users that started using your service or product. If you don't have a large user base yet, just look at that very first group of people and ask yourself the question, how did they first learn about you? How did they first learn that you existed? Were they the product of a recommendation? Were they the product of some kind of traditional advertising? Did they come to you because they're part of your natural contact network? Or did they see something on Facebook? Did they see something on Twitter? Customers will usually be very happy to point out how they found out about you. And it's actually a very common question for brands to ask, a very smart question for brands to ask too. You can also, once your business is up and running and everything's been ironed out, all the fundamentals are there, the business model, you found product market fit, you're there, you're selling. Once you're there, there are a lot of ways to use analytics to determine which channel is bringing in the highest conversion rate for your product. If we're talking about online sales or some kind of digital product, that can definitely be done. So you can trace how many customers are coming in from a certain marketing effort, from a certain communication effort or campaign that you've engaged in. And even if you decide to spend money on it, you can actually trace back to the dollar how much that conversion costed you. So there are a lot of new tools these days. The space is heating up. The space of, and by that I mean the space of tracking down conversion and optimizing for it, which is totally related to figuring out where your best customers are, right? Because if you know where your highest conversion rates are, you clearly know where you need to invest more of your time.
Right. That's the nice thing with digital marketing, huh? Because you can see within hours if something's working, if you're advertising in the right place, if you have the right call to action, if the green button converts better than the blue button. Do you think it's easier marketing today, or do you think it's harder because of the many different outlets and micro niches and, 1,000 different social media platforms you could potentially advertise on and still get enough business?
That's such an interesting question, as I ask myself that almost every day. I would consider myself a very classical marketer that is knee-deep in digital marketing. So that is like seemingly a contradiction. But if you think about it, the basics haven't changed. If you had the chance to read any of Ogilvy's books where he talks about how to create great copy, how to write, great sales documents, how to appeal to customers, all of that is still relevant. And it still just plays a role in how brands face digital channels. It's just a matter of adapting it to new emerging realities, restrictions, to even features that are very specific to the channels that you're talking about. For example, the fact that Twitter has a length restriction. You obviously need to be a very talented copywriter, as per Mr. Ogilvy's advice, but you now also need to think about how brief you can be and just how you can summarize, how you can condense all of that information into really digestible tweets. So it's exciting, it's challenging, but the one thing that I consider is most groundbreaking about digital marketing, it's just how transparent ROI is for many of these initiatives versus, investing in a print magazine, for example, where how many people are subscribed, in theory, how many eyes should be looking at the page, but you can't literally tell how many eyes looked at the page. Whereas in online channels, you do have that privilege, and it kind of becomes a responsibility too, because you have all this data. What are you going to do with it?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm rereading John Capel's How to Make Your Advertising Make Money. Mm-hmm. All right, so this was published in, let me see here, 1983.
Wow.
So, and he was talking about the work he had done for the previous 50 years, mm-hmm. right? But he's talking about how they would run an ad in multiple magazines, or 11 or 12 different versions of the same ad. But they'd have to buy it in print and wait and run it, or make a change and let it run. I mean, for months and months, sometimes a year. So these marketing and advertising campaigns were multi-year events. So the old Mad Men, I love that series. I've watched them on Netflix. But, now you can run the same tests, just about from your iPhone sitting by the pool. In the course of an hour, you can launch those same 11 tests and have results over the weekend. Yep. It's amazing. So the answer is use old school methods to leverage new school technologies. Is that about it?
You got it right. That's exactly what it is.
All right. I like the way you think.
Great minds think alike.
So can this be outsourced? I mean, these small businesses I talk about, they the lawn care guy, the chiropractor. They're going to say, I'm busy. I'm busy mowing lawns. I'm sweating all day, every day. I'm cracking backs all day, every day. Can't I just sub this out? Can't I get an intern, for minimum wage from the local college to work on this, in between classes or in the summer and just bang it out, between June and September and have my marketing done and branding done for the year?
That's understandable. I've definitely heard that argument before. And, when you're passionate about what you do and about your product, it's only natural that you want to spend more time doing that versus doing activities that are not within your core. You might not feel too competitive in marketing, but you're definitely the best lawnmower in the area. And it's understandable that the first thing you think about is outsourcing, just having someone else deal with it. Fortunately and unfortunately, though, branding is a lot about direction. Execution is very important. But if you are able to even set aside a few hours of your week, a few minutes, if it's too hard to set apart a few hours, and think about the vision that you have for this brand, about the direction, then you can effectively outsource a lot of the tasks related to bringing it to life. What you can't outsource is the leadership. You as the best, you as the best promoter of your business, you as the most natural leader in your business, owe it to yourself and to your business to set aside that time. So even if you're not involved in the daily tasks, in the routine posts, in the outreach, in the distribution, in the placing of ads in certain channels, those are all things you can hire out. I am of the belief that you can't really hire out your business's direction. You can certainly work with a mentor, a consultant, but in the end, it's a deeply personal experience.
Well, and how big should that vision be, right? I want to build the Sales Whisperer up. Is it crazy to say I want to be bigger than Tony Robbins or the next Zig Ziglar, or should I tone it down a bit?
Oh, do not tone yourself down the least bit. All right. That would be my advice, my life advice for anyone, is not to tone down themselves. But yeah, you just reminded me of something that Jack Ma said at the World Economic Forum recently. He said that once a really top Walmart executive had visited him in China and had asked him, we were kind of talking, and Jack Ma said that, who knows, maybe in 10 years, Alibaba is bigger than Walmart. And he was met with a blank stare, crickets, nobody says anything, everyone's feeling really uncomfortable. And the Walmart executive is like, well, you certainly have high hopes. Not going to happen, at least not in his, based on what he knew, based on his background. But then Jack Ma told him something that's really smart. He told him, to be able to get 10,000 new customers, you would need to build X new warehouses and invest in all these physical assets. For me, it takes 2 servers. And that whole answer, just the way he took that critique and that, don't get over yourself. You're not going to be bigger than Walmart. That was truly inspiring. It just tells you that the limitations that people try to communicate to you, the no's, the buts, everything people keep telling you, that become these roadblocks to your vision, are reflective of what they've experienced and what they know, but not on what you know. Jack Ma knows servers. Someone knows servers, it's him. And when it gets down to business, business visions are limited by knowledge. So just always be guided by what you're an expert at, and don't take other people's doubts or questions as something that's going to mark your future or predictions, because that's not what they are. They're just reflective of what they know and what they think might happen.
What if I'm an expert at just sipping whiskey and taking naps?
Oh, you should sell whiskey. in that case.
All right. I like the way you think.
You should totally sell whiskey.
All right. My final question I started asking is, picture our listeners. They are traveling, they're jogging, they're riding a bike. They can't really take notes right this second. But what's some parting words of wisdom you want to leave them? So when they can take action, what should they do to benefit from this interview? I mean, what kind of action should they take? What should they do to build this brand? Like you said, your brand can shake the world. So what do they need to do when this podcast ends?
Well, here's something you can do now. Today, at some point during the day, not sure what time you're listening this, just take 5 minutes alone for yourself. Nobody else. Just find some space, 5 minutes, and ask yourself where you want to see you and your business 5 years from now. I know that 5 years might seem like a long time, but just consider that, envision that, and if you can, write it down. Once you do that, wake up the next day, so like wake up tomorrow, and figure out if what you're doing on that day is getting you closer. If it isn't, reevaluate. That's the one thing I can leave you guys with. And that's the core of branding, is just knowing that you are building up to something every day. You are building that story every day. It's a new chapter. Right.
All right. Well, I will be linking to you and Miss Laura Busche, Busche. I've got your Twitter. I got everything. I got Twitter. I got your book, Lean Branding. Got your Instagram, your LinkedIn. So it will all be there for everyone to find you. And so safe travels on your return from Colombia. And I look forward to meeting you one day soon at one of these worldwide conferences. I'm sure our paths will cross.
Sure thing.
All right. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day. And everyone, just have a super amazing week.
Thank you.
Bye.
I like the way she wrapped things up. Today, take 5 minutes alone to yourself and ask yourself where you want to see you and your business 5 years from now. 5 years will come quicker than you believe, right? Then wake up tomorrow, let it kind of simmer, let it percolate, and then figure out if what you're doing today is getting you closer to that goal. And if not, then reevaluate, adjust, go in another direction. It really is that simple. I love her message. Your brand can shake the world. I think we all dream too little, if at all. Our goals are too small. You need a big goal to help you overcome the obstacles that will be thrown at you every single day. Okay, if there aren't obstacles, if there aren't things standing in your way that you have to address and overcome to then get stronger to provide a better service to the market, then what need is there of you and your business? So embrace the obstacles. Understand somebody has to overcome them. Understand that people will pay to have obstacles overcome and or eliminated. That's why you're here. You just got to get clear on whose obstacles, what issues were you put on this earth to help address and smooth out, and then things will fall into place. So lots of notes in there. I love how she talked about just getting into even little things like trade show marketing, having clear calls to action. That's just another way of saying, what Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind. You're going to that trade show. Why? How are you going to attract people? What's the purpose? What's the call to action? Do you want them to opt in for something? Do you want them to buy at the event, with a promotion, special pricing? Most people are just winging everything that they're doing. They wing it from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed, and it's why you can't sleep, because you don't have things mapped out. Got to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it. Okay? If you would like a little free inspiration daily on how to get some clarity, how to create inbound sales, again, head over to this episode, thesaleswhisperer.com/205. And on the right-hand side, you can opt in for free. for my daily tips, and it talks about creating inbound sales. After you do that, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes. You would not believe how important that is. It helps get the word out. And the more you are helping me by promoting this and sharing it, it helps me serve rather than sell. So, leave a comment on the Facebook page, rate it on iTunes, Google Play. That really does help. Thanks for listening. And as always, remember to sell different.